Hey my dear students, what's up? I hope you all are doing good and are happy, healthy and wise as always. So today I'm here with you to start with the first chapter of chemistry class 10th CBSE, and the chapter is named as Chemical Reactions and Equations. So I have written one chemical equation, CH4 plus 2O2 to form CO2 plus 2 water. Now the question is, ma'am, what is the difference between a chemical reaction and a chemical equation? The next question is, why are we supposed to study the chapter chemical reactions and equations? Third question is, what are the different topics that we have to study, and so on. So you can have infinite number of questions from this particular chapter. But what I thought of doing with you guys is first teaching you something related to grade 9th. Okay, so guys, you have already done all these things in grade 9, but I'm like sure that 80% of you students would have forgotten what was taught to you in grade 9th. So I'll just quickly give you a recap of class 9th, and mind it, all these things which I'll be teaching you in today's video are really gonna be very helpful for the first chapter and for all the upcoming chapters of chemistry class 10th. Okay, so without any further ado, let's directly start with the chapter with the name Classification of Ions as our first slide. Okay, so first of all, I will tell you what do we mean by an ion. You know, right, if there is an atom and the atom is losing electrons, it becomes a cation. A positively charged ion is known as cation. Similarly, you know, if an atom gains an electron, it becomes negatively charged and will be known as anion. Okay, so this you people must remember, and if you do not remember, let me tell you a shortcut. Write the spelling of anion, A-N-I-O-N. So this is the spelling of anion, and if I ask you to write this in different segments, you can see N stands for negative ion. So from now onwards you can read anion as a negative ion. So remember, anions are negatively charged and the other way around, cations are positively charged. Okay, so at least this point is clear. What do we mean by ions? So ions are the species which carry either a positive or a negative charge. Right? Let us now talk about monoatomic ions. See, mono means one. Atomic means atom. So monoatomic ions are the ions which have just one atom. For example, Na+. So Na is having just one atom of sodium. K+, Mg2+. So all of them may have different charges, but they have just one atom. Okay, now you might be thinking, ma'am, is it mandatory to keep the atom in the bracket and then put a plus or minus? So answer is no, it's not mandatory. But if you have a habit of writing Na plus, and if you have a habit of writing Na bracket plus, so this is much a better habit compared to writing without a bracket. The importance of bracket you will realize in the next in the next slide itself. Okay. Moving on further to diatomic ions, as the name suggests, the ions having exactly two atoms are known as diatomic ions. For example, look at this. Inside the bracket you can see two oxygen atoms carrying a positive charge, so it is diatomic. Inside the bracket you can see two oxygen atoms carrying a negative charge. Two oxygen atoms carrying a 2 negative, two oxygen atoms carrying a 2 positive. Okay, so irrespective of whatever is the charge present outside the bracket, the number of atoms inside the bracket has to be 2 to call it as a diatomic ion. I hope this is also clear. Moving further is triatomic ions. Tri means 3. So the ions having exactly 3 atoms are known as triatomic ions. For example, I have written NO3 and then whole 2 minus. Okay, now see, nitrogen we have 1, and how many oxygens? Oh, my bad, it should be NO2 minus. And how many oxygens we have? 2, and hence it becomes NO2, and here also instead of 2 minus it is actually 1 minus. So the total number of atoms are 3, and these are known as triatomic ions. And the last category we have is polyatomic ions. So poly means many. Atomic means atoms. So if there is any ion having more than 3 atoms, we will call all of them as polyatomic ions. For example, I have written the first formula CO3 2 minus. How many carbons are there? 1. How many oxygens are there? 3. So how many total? 4. 4 is greater than 3. So CO3 2 minus is known as a polyatomic ion. Similarly, SO4 2 minus, 1 sulfur, 4 oxygen, making it a total of 5, polyatomic. Similarly, 1 hydrogen, 1 carbon and 3 oxygens. So 3 plus 1, 4 plus 1, 5. Okay, and the last option I have written is ZnO2 2 minus. So 1 zinc and 2 oxygen. So 3. I should have written it here because it's an example of triatomic ion. So I hope till here you got to know what are ions and how they can be classified. Now, having done these ions, I will now talk about some really important ions which you need to remember for grade 10th. Like if you are forgetting any one of them, you will be in great trouble. So better you have to practice these ions, practice by writing the charges also. This slide is going to be really important. Okay, now we have monopositive ions. So do not get confused with the name. The name is like very clear as per the definition. Mono means one, positive means positive. That means the ions which have just one unit of positive charge are known as monopositive ions. For example, you have hydrogen. It is written as H plus. You have lithium, Li plus. You have sodium, Na plus. You have potassium, K plus. I hope this much is clear to everyone that either you write H as 1 plus, or you write H as plus 1, or you write H with just 1 like this plus. So all these mean the same thing. And obviously you can also write H plus 1 like this also without the bracket. Okay, so now for those who will find it difficult to remember that hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium has plus 1 charge, you can remember it like hai, li, na, ki. So you can remember hai, li, na, ki. All Helena ki will have plus 1 charge. Okay, so I'm writing it here, hai, li, na, ki. So hai stands for hydrogen, li stands for lithium, na stands for sodium, K stands for potassium. So all of them will have plus 1 charge. Done? Moving further to the dipositive ions. So these are the ions which have a total of plus 2 charge. And the examples are zinc 2 plus, Mg 2 plus, calcium 2 plus, lead 2 plus. Do not forget, lead is written as Lead, but the symbol is Pb, and Pb will have a total of plus 2 charge. Okay, I don't have a mnemonic for this because all of these are like very simple. So you have to remember zinc, magnesium, calcium, lead, all will be there in plus 2 charges. I hope this much is also clear. Moving further, I have the third set which consists of aluminium. So aluminium is the ion having plus 3 charge. Okay. Now see, I have written that if the ions are monoatomic. Monoatomic means there is just one atom. So either you write them with the bracket or you write them without the bracket, that is one and the same thing. For example, here you can see I have written as H plus. H is written in the bracket. Or I can also write H plus without the bracket. Lithium plus with, lithium plus without. Magnesium 2 plus with, magnesium 2 plus without. Aluminium 3 plus with, aluminium 3 plus without. So you write with the bracket or without the bracket, we will not have any problem until and unless all the ions are monoatomic. Okay, so I hope things are clear till here. Moving further, now I'll be talking about some special ions. This is again very, very important. So many times this particular slide will find its use in the CBSE board exams. So see here. So if one ion exists with 2 charges, I have written, suppose that iron is there, it exists in nature in 2 forms. It exists as Fe2 plus, it exists as Fe3 plus. Okay, once again, if any one ion exists in 2 different charges, for example, iron exists as Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus, okay, then the ion which is having a lower charge out of these two will be known as us ion. and the ion with a higher charge will be known as ick ions. For example, Fe plus 2 is plus 2, Fe plus 3 is plus 3, and you know that 2 is lesser than 3, so Fe2 plus will be known as us, Fe3 plus will be known as ick. Okay, so in other words, Fe2 plus is known as ferrous, Fe3 plus is known as ferric. Do not forget this thing. This is very, very important for CBSE exams. So Fe2 plus is ferrous, Fe3 plus is ferric. Okay, now moving further, if you talk about copper, copper actually exists in two forms, Cu plus 1 and Cu2 plus. So out of plus 1 and plus 2, which is smaller? Plus 1. So Cu plus 1 is known as cuprous. Cu2 plus will be known as cupric. Okay. So I hope in this slide it is clear that 2 doesn't mean us. 1 doesn't mean us. 3 doesn't mean ick. Right? This you do not have to remember. You just have to remember out of the 2, the smaller one is us and the bigger one is ick. Out of these two, plus 1 and plus 2, smaller one is plus 1 is us, bigger one or larger one is ick. Clear? So here you learn 4 different ions. One is Fe2 plus ferrous, next is Fe3 plus ferric, next is Cu plus 1 cuprous, next is Cu plus 2 cupric. Okay, so these also you need to remember along with the previous ions that I told you. Moving further, now see, if suppose, now let me see here, there are certain ions which are known as eyed ions. These are known as eyed ions. See here, hydrogen exists in nature as -1 and this is known as hydride. Oxygen and sulfur exist in nature with -2. These are known as oxide, sulfide. And nitrogen exists in nature as 3- and this is known as nitride. Understood? Once again I am telling, eyed ions means there will be one particular atom, let's say X, which is carrying either -1, -2 or -3. So these will be known as eyed ions. For example, H with 1 minus is hydride, O with 2 minus is oxide, S with 2 minus is sulfide, N with 3 minus is nitride. Now X represents the halogens with 1 minus will be known as halide. For example, F minus is fluoride, Cl minus is chloride, Br minus is bromide, I minus is iodide. Okay, so you will find the use of all these ions in first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, fourth chapter, fifth chapter. So all the chapters in chemistry will be using these ions again and again. So it's better you remember them now itself. Okay, moving further, if I tell you about, let me tell you about the 8 and 8 ions. See here, there are two types of ions. The polyatomic ones I'm talking about. So we have SO4, a total of 2 minus, and I have SO3, a total of 2 minus. Okay, so one is having sulfur, another is also having sulfur. One is having 2 minus charge, other is also having 2 minus charge. The only difference in these two ions that you can see here is in the number of oxygen atoms. Here you have 4 oxygen atoms and here you have 3 oxygen atoms, right? I am not at all concerned about the number of oxygen atoms. I am only concerned about the relative number of oxygen atoms. So you can say 4 is greater than 3, right? The ion with more number of oxygen atom will be known as 8 ion, ATE. And the ion with less oxygen atoms will be known as 8 ion. For example, SO4 2 minus and SO3 minus. Sulfur is same, 2 minus is same. Here 4 oxygens, here 3 oxygens. That means here more oxygens, here less oxygen. So more oxygen will be known as sulfate ion. Less oxygen will be known as sulfite ion. Okay, remember sulfate, remember sulfite. Moving further, you have NO3 with a -1 and NO2 with a -1. See, nitrogen same, 1 minus same. The only difference is here 3 oxygens, here 2 oxygens. So the one with more oxygen will be known as nitrate ion and the one with less oxygen will be known as nitrite ion. Okay, so once again, see, I am not saying 4 is equal to 8 and 3 is equal to 8. No, I am saying if there are two ions, one with 4 oxygen, one with 3 oxygen, then 4 is known as 8 and then 3 will be known as 8. Similarly, if there is other ion, one with 3 and one with 2, since 3 is more, so you will call it as 8. Since 2 is less, so you will call it as 8 ion. Okay, so these were 4 another ions that you have to remember without fail. So please do not forget them. Practice them by writing them again and again. Okay, few more things I'll tell you. See, we were talking about the importance of bracket, right? If I'm writing bracket SO4 2 minus, inside we have written SO4. That means how many sulfur atoms? 1. How many oxygen atoms? 4. And what is the total charge? 2 minus. Am I right? But suppose if I am not taking care of bracket and I'm putting the numbers anyhow or the other. So suppose instead of writing SO4 2 minus, I have written SO then whole 4 2 minus. According to this, what is the number of sulfur atoms? 1 into 4, 4. What is the number of oxygen atoms? 1 into 4, 4. But this is wrong, right? So you should not play with the brackets. If you are keeping a bracket at one position, make sure the position of bracket is important. Okay, so this was the importance of bracket. Let me move further and see if some other ions I have to tell you or not. So yes, one more thing I'll tell you here. This is also one easy way to remember. First of all, I told you that just consider H2SO4 and H2SO3. Okay, so this is the same as we just did. It's just a further continuation of that thing. You have two acids. One is H2SO4, one is H2SO3. Now H is common, S is common. The only difference comes in O. The one with more oxygens, that acid will be known as ic acid. The one with less oxygens will be known as us acid. Right? So for example, H2SO4 and H2SO3. H2SO4 means 4 oxygens and H2SO3 means 3 oxygens. So 4 is greater than 3, so this will be known as ic acid, sulfuric acid, whereas this will be known as sulfurous acid. Okay, now one is HNO3 and one is HNO2. So now H is common, N is common, here 3 oxygens and here 2 oxygens. And we know 3 is more than 2. So this will be nitric acid and this will be nitrous acid. Understood? Now many of you might be getting confused. Ma'am, right now you told ic acid and us acid and earlier you told A times and I times. What's all that? We are getting confused. So there is no need of confusion. Remember, if you can find out ic acid, it will give 8 ions. If you find out us acid, will give 8 ions. For example, we are writing H2SO4 and H2SO3. So which is having more oxygen? This. So this will be sulfuric acid, ic acid. And this will be sulfurous acid, us acid, right? If I take out 2H plus from here, we get SO4, 2 minus. And here we get SO3, 2 minus. The ion with more oxygen will be known as sulfate ions. And the ions with less oxygen will be known as sulfide ions. Understood? So see here, what did I teach? The ic acid will give us 8 ions. From the example also see that. Let me change the color of pen. The ic acid is going to give me 8 ions. The us acid is going to give me 8 ions. That's it. Understood? So guys, this was all about what we had done till now. So one more example I have, HNO3. This is nitric, HNO2. This is nitrous. So ic acid will give 8 ions. Us acid will give 8 ions. Okay. Two more examples you need to remember. If I write CO3 whole bracket 2 minus. So this is known as carbonate ion. Carbonate ion. And suppose if I'm putting one H plus in this, so it becomes HCO3, and this is -1. Whenever you are putting one H plus to this ion, so this becomes hydrogen carbonate. Okay, so to carbonate you are adding hydrogen, it becomes hydrogen carbonate. Or this is also known as bicarbonate. You need to remember both the names, what is hydrogen carbonate and what is bicarbonate. Okay, so guys, these were all the ions that you have to remember throughout your class 10th. I should not have started the chapter like this, because with this the chapter sounds to be tough. But if you remember these things, the chapter, not the chapter, all the chapters are gonna be like really easy. Fine. So let me quickly take a recap of what all we have done. So first I started with the classification of ions. What you have to remember is, this is just for your understanding, monoatomic, diatomic, triatomic, polyatomic, all are just for your understanding purpose. Now you need to remember the charges on hydrogen, +1, lithium, sodium, potassium, +1. Point number 1, which you need to remember anyhow or the other. Point number 2, you need to remember zinc is 2+, magnesium is 2+, calcium is 2+, lead is 2+. Second point you need to remember. Third point you need to remember is aluminium +3, for sure you need to remember. Fourth point, we talked about us and ic ions. You need to remember all the four: ferric, ferrous, cupric, cuprous. Okay, so you need to remember all these four importantly. Next, we talked about sulfate, sulfite, nitrate, nitrite. You need to remember these also for sure. And then this is just for your understanding. Yes, you need to remember the iodines also. Very, very important slide. And this was also for your understanding purposes, that H2SO4 is sulfuric, H2SO3 is sulfurous. So if you remember these acids name, things are gonna be like really easy. So I hope I have taught you enough for today. So that is it for today's video lecture. I will be meeting you in the next video with some similar topics which will help you get more confidence for class 10th syllabus. Okay, but before that I want you all people to revise all the things very, very properly. Do not just mug it up in one go, rather practice writing these ions 2 to 3 times, maybe 2 times a day you can write. If you do this practice for like 3 days, you will be full-fledged ready for the chapter. So that's it for today. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.